Society of North America. I'm here because we are in the midst of a potentially monumental ecological crisis. It is only through a new environmentalism 2.0 that progress can be made. We believe that our only hope for human advancement and even human survival is through the exponential advance of science in the service of humanity. We stand firmly against the war on science that is predicated on the appeal to nature fallacy, which is the belief that whatever is natural must be good and whatever is unnatural must be bad. This belief has become an impediment to advances in areas such as human health, social progress, and even environmental progress. In the field of medicine, the appeal to nature fallacy has already led to catastrophic outcomes. Resistance to vaccines threatens public health and the lives of children. The unwarranted resistance to GMOs has not only held back the fight against climate change, but it has also hampered our ability to feed the developing world as well. Campaigns against GMOs have also held back efforts to ward off the deadly Aedes aegypti mosquito, which has killed countless millions as a carrier of disease and plagues. The scientific consensus concerning the safety of GMOs is solidly supported in every major scientific organization across the planet. The only thing green about being anti-GMO is the extra cash that is made by overcharging for expensive boutique food. But that won't cut it when it comes to raising crops with accelerating heat stress, droughts, floods, disease, and insect infestations brought on by a hotter planet. It makes no sense to accept the call of the IPCC for decarbonization within the next 12 years and yet reject their conclusion that these goals are impossible without nuclear power, which has proven itself to be the cleanest, safest, and most reliable way of achieving decarbonization. It is the most reliable way to decarbonize simply because the alternatives of weather-dependent power sources are inherently unreliable. And nuclear is the cleanest energy source because it is the only form of energy production that completely encases its waste stream. Super safe, advanced Generation 4 reactors, which will almost completely convert existing nuclear waste to centuries worth of energy, are coming very close to commercialization. In fact, it goes completely against most everything we're led to believe, but nuclear is legitimately the safest form of energy generation according to all the accepted worldwide energy fatality data. But there is one thing that nuclear is not safe for, and that is the fossil fuel industry. The fact of the matter is that the fossil fuel industry has a long history of funding the anti-nuclear movement, along with climate change deniers, to protect their bottom line. Solid science is in dire need of a champion. And that is what eco-modernism is all about. Eco-modernism is a new environmental paradigm which looks to reverse the fear of nuclear power and scientific progress in general. Ecology-based modernism is the most direct way to define it. Eco-modernism as a philosophy is described in the Eco-Modernist Manifesto. We believe humanity should not be rejecting technological progress, but rather separate our impacts from nature through the responsible use of technology and urbanization. Urbanization is an unstoppable worldwide trend and the best solution to many environmental problems. It offers sustainable development for the human population and is a historic antidote to both deforestation and species extinction as humans move away from using wildlife as their protein source. Vertical, urban, high-rise architecture minimizes the use of land, resources, and energy, enabling walkable cities that facilitates the more efficient use of mass public transit as well. It must be emphasized that our support for technological solutions is definitely not about defending industrial polluters, nor do we accept funding from corporations or industry. Nor does our defense of technology imply that we just need to sit back and let things take care of themselves. To the contrary, we believe that humanity is at a crossroads that severely threatens our future on this planet. We reject the idea of resource limits on many levels. The advance of science has a long history of getting around problems of resource scarcity and will continue to do so. Another reason is that Earth is just one of a multitude of worlds available to explore in our solar system and beyond. Comets and asteroids are untapped reservoirs for raw materials. If we could find a way to thrive in artificial ecosystems off-world, we could use what we learn to help sustain terrestrial ecosystems here on Earth. I hope by now you understand the worthiness of our cause. Ecomodernism is really only a philosophy at this time. I want to talk to you about the necessity of turning it into a movement, which will be part of the larger environmentalist movement. For it is only through our presence and participation that there can be any hope of moving environmentalism in the right direction. Our aim is not to divide the environmental movement, but rather to multiply its numbers with the incorporation of many scientific and educational communities that is working to both build chapters of eco-modernist societies and support our growth worldwide. We aspire to increase our numbers by bringing together the numerous supporters of climate action that have been alienated by mainstream environmentalism's wildly contradictory support for the shutting down of nuclear power plants in the midst of a climate emergency, and welcome them into our ranks. Thank you.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube, EcoModern channel. Also to subscribe to us on Twitter and Facebook, EcoModern Society of North America.
Welcome to the program. This is the Eco-Modernist Channel Live. I'm Carl Pauls. I'm here with Gabe Bignetti and Christopher Bergen. Today, we hope to be talking with Thies Beckers, but let me change the title because he's not here yet. And we have stuff to talk about. Here we go again. We are going to war with Iran. Or maybe not technically war. What would you call this? Is this a special action to disarm them? Are we back in the weapons of mass destruction? Are we looking at regime change? What is going on in Iran?
Chris, you could go ahead, man.
Yeah, get us started.
On the immediate shallow level, I would say that this is another distraction. I mean, what were we doing last weekend that we're not talking about anymore? What we're doing the weekend before that, we're not really talking about much anymore. Although these are bigger and bigger and bigger things from week to week, month to month, seems like. But in a way, this is a distraction for the American public. I feel bad for the Iranian people. The Iranian government, they've been difficult to deal with for years for a variety of reasons, human rights as well as straight up political reasons. But yeah, this is, I think the timing of going in doesn't matter that much. They talk a lot about they almost have the bomb. Well, I haven't heard anywhere that said they have more than 60%, and that may be like a month or 2 or 3 months ago. They haven't enriched more than 60%. 90% is generally considered, although I have heard some people with really excellent knowledge about weapons say that you can do less than 90%
Yeah.
and
I seen
get
a thing by
and get a
infrared.
boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Iran might be near that level, but they'd have to have really special, and besides which they need to switch it from the liquid hexafluoride, uranium hexafluoride, needs to be moved back into a solid. And there's and that fluoride could be a weapon in and of itself once they separate it. So it's there's a lot of ambiguities here. And in the background of all this, are we going to get China upset with the United States? Because Iran's primary customer has been China for their oil. They have to shift it between other ships with other flags, something some people might call the dark fleet. There's, I think it's something like 1,400 ships that are willing to play that game. And Iran's number one customer is China, and this is not an insignificant amount of petroleum and possibly natural gas being sent to China. So is China going to be upset with the United States as well? So there are ramifications. People talk about World War III on the surface. I blow them off. Then I stop to think about, well, there's all these little pieces here and here and here and back there. Maybe World War III. If this doesn't settle down in the next month, then maybe World War III is a possibility.
Yeah.
That's where I end up.
Let me start with a background, a primer, if you will, on what's going on. What is it about Iran, and why do we think that what they're doing is not okay? Of course, we've had many nations pursue nuclear technologies, and the principal mechanism by which a nuclear energy or nuclear weapon is created is by taking uranium, which is naturally 0.7% enriched, and that means 0.7% of the material is U-235, and the rest is U-238. When we enrich that to 3.5 to 5%, that is suitable for a conventional light water reactor. Normal 300 megawatt to gigawatt size reactor, 300 megawatts fairly efficient, gigawatts very efficient at 3.5 to 5%. And that's what America and France and the old German reactors and most of China runs on, is low enriched uranium. So we, the international community, engaged with Iran in the 2010s. They had a lot of these centrifuges for enriching uranium. They had almost 20,000 first generation centrifuges, about 1,000 advanced centrifuges. They had 7 tons of low enriched uranium and almost 200 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium. Like, that's HALEU, high assay low enriched, or as the Wikipedia says, medium enriched uranium. And what the what the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, says is that if you are above 20%, if you have more than 25 kilograms of that, you have reached a stage of significant quantities. And that is where you have to start worrying about a weapon. Well, today Iran has over 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. That's definitely concerning. And we got to know, how did we get here? After the levels I mentioned before, the 200 kilograms of HALEU, the Obama administration helped negotiate a treaty called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. This is the Iran nuclear deal. It was the deal to take Iran from a weapons path nation to a peaceful nuclear energy path nation. And that was the basic plan, was to get Iran towards a path of peaceful use of nuclear energy rather than nuclear weapons. And unfortunately, under the first Trump administration, we tore up that deal. And Iran has been increasing their levels of enrichment ever since.
Yeah. And by the way, Joe Biden never honored that deal, which is really messed up.
Do you mean under his presidency when it wasn't in effect?
Well, he wanted to renegotiate, you
Yeah.
know, and it was a done deal. There was nothing, what's to negotiate, you know? Drop the sanctions and let's normalize, you know?
I would love to have that done, but the problem is that Iran wasn't hadn't agreed to downblend their uranium, and they hadn't actually taken steps towards it. And that's what it takes when you have a two-party negotiation. Is you need to have we can't just release the funds. And of course, unfortunately, after October 7th, there's billions of dollars of Iran energy revenues that was frozen. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah. Pretty sure that I had heard that it wasn't just between the United States and Iran. France had some involvement, possibly the UK had some involvement. In fact, when the first Trump administration broke the agreement, France tried to step in and keep things going, but things over several months fell apart. And but until Trump pulled us out, Iranians were following it. They're looking forward to running that reactor and possibly getting a second or third reactor up and running within whatever, a decade or so, I think. And that they were following it. They were allowing the IAEA in to do inspections, and so they're being good players and good neighbors. Maybe the neighbors you don't like, but you reach an agreement. You had a talk. You said, okay, I won't play my music loud after 10 p.m. and you won't do this thing. Now you won't start up your hot rod car on your property, before like eight in the morning on the weekend, something like whatever the deal was. They were following it. People were getting along. Trump wrecked it, and France couldn't salvage it. They didn't have enough clout like the United States. And so it's a shame looking in hindsight.
Yeah. And I can't I know that, the Biden administration could have done a lot more, especially when it comes to the Middle East. There's a great deal of disappointment we can have. But it is sort of the method of slow diplomacy, trust but verify, all the American exceptionalism that we like to believe will get us ahead in the world that his administration was taking us back towards. But that's not what we get. We got what we voted for. Fooled again. Not right.
Yeah. Hi, Thies.
Hey.
How you doing, man?
Fantastic. Good.
We're
Can't
you
hear
are
him.
muted.
Can't hear Thies.
Go ahead and
There he
unmute
comes.
yourself. Hey.
Okay.
Is your hardware muted? Is your correct hardware device selected? Can you go through the audio settings on Zoom and double check this? Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll do
no
another
sound there.
introduction
sound.
for Thies really quick.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, this is where we at. So there's news online of some pretty big bunker busting weapons being deployed on Iran, targeting their
Let's
nuclear
test it.
facilities.
Yeah.
There we go.
It works.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
it
All
works.
right. Yeah. Well, just to
Hooray.
Go ahead.
chime in. I mean,
Yeah. By the
um,
way,
listen. Iran was a signatory to the NPT, right? The Non-Proliferation
Yeah.
Treaty. But then the question arises: why do you need to enrich your uranium-235 levels up to 80%? Right? I mean, that's just. I mean, you don't need it if you just want if you just want power. I mean, even if you want to go do some small modular reactor with
A research reactor.
or
Yeah.
research reactor, right? I mean, you can go up to 20%. I mean, that should be plenty. So that's the only question mark I have about this whole situation. As for your presidents, well, it's unbecoming of a Dutch person to comment, but I've been reflecting on that with my dad a lot recently. It's terribly warm. That's the reason why I was a little bit late. I mean, Biden, looking at it from hindsight, I mean, yes, he was a good president for the United States because obviously you had a really good economy during his term. But if we look at it from an international perspective, then I think he may well be one of the worst presidents that we have had in a long time.
Yeah, I'm not happy with him either.
Very tepid, very timid.
And sometimes reckless too.
you think back and you go down the line of history and you come across people like Neville Chamberlain, who basically appeased the Germans, and they did invade Poland anyway, regardless. They did annex Czechia anyway. Well, it was Sudetenland. So I mean, weak leaders, especially weak leaders from a geopolitical standpoint, they breed terrible situations. So that's why I am not a fan of Biden.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's really important that they are signatories of the NPT and they work with the IAEA. And really important, Iran allows IAEA inspections. They have cameras that record everything they do in those nuclear facilities. They have inspectors on the ground. So that's why we know they have, like, down to the ounce how much enriched uranium they have. It's like 408 or 409 plus kilograms.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is definitely a significant quantity. It's kind of worrying, but they have not turned away inspectors. They haven't tampered with equipment. And then we just blew up all that monitoring equipment. So now if there is if there's a chance of diverting that material to a weapons program, well, our administration just gave them the opportunity to do that under the fog of war.
Who among you has been in a nuclear installation somewhere where they keep either spent nuclear fuel or anything else fuel related?
I mean, close. I've been to Hanford.
Yeah, well, Hanford should qualify. I mean, over here in the Netherlands, we have COVRA, which stands for the Central Repository for Nuclear Radioactive Materials, or for radioactive materials, not nuclear. And they basically have cameras that are directly linked to the IAEA in the rooms where it's not even plutonium that is stored there. It's not even uranium. It's just fission products. Right. So they have cameras in every room, in every room, including the room where the high level waste is stored. So they watch this stuff like hawks. And if Iran was compliant with that, well, it's one thing to say, well, you're not adhering to the rules, and it's another thing to say, or to basically destroy the means to to keep an eye on all that.
Yeah.
You know. Now we are getting into this territory. What was that movie with George Clooney, Peacemaker, and there was another movie with Ben Affleck where he plays one of those Tom Clancy guys.
Not Broken Arrow. I'm thinking of Broken Arrow, but that's a
Yeah,
different scenario.
yeah, he plays the same character that Harrison Ford plays in The Hunt for Red October and Clear and Present Danger, and
That's not the one with the ship came in and had a bomb
yeah,
on it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
and
forget
it
the name of that.
exploded. It exploded in Baltimore. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you start thinking of. Now we have 400 odd kilograms of not well reasonably highly enriched uranium
Yeah.
that we can't account for anymore. I mean, that's a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, enriching that up to 95%. I don't know how high that you need to go, 95 or 99. I mean, it still takes some effort, but the brunt of the work has been done.
Yeah, what's the highest you've heard that they have completed enrichments? I've heard 60, but that was like a month ago, I think.
Yeah, I heard 80. Let's see what they said. What they said. Enrichment.
And these percentages aren't necessarily all the uranium, but a portion of uranium which has been enriched the most.
Yeah,
It's not the
they
full
say
amount.
they say that I mean, this is an AI answer from Google. They say 83.7%.
Huh.
Yeah, and that's from CNN, PBS, and AP News. I mean, I don't know the veracity of those stories. It's hard to.
AP's generally pretty good. CNN can be hit and miss.
Yeah.
I mean, not much better than Fox, I don't think.
But
The
it
best
says
that
here.
I'm finding a June 22nd CNN article, and they're still saying 60% here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, either way, I mean, 60% is high as well. I
Yeah.
just don't know at what point you can actually get or coax a nuclear explosion out of that. Nick Turan
I've
would
I've
be.
heard above 90%, what I've heard consistently for a decade now. So
Yeah, I mean, I had to the other day. I watched Times. I watched the British Times Radio YouTube channel a lot. And there's this guy. His name is called Michael Clark, and he was talking about that a lot of these nuclear bombs that are existing today might not go off because it's very hard to do, right? And then I was like, listen, setting off nuclear bombs used to be pretty common practice. We've detonated well over 2,500 of the things. So it's not like we can't do it. It's just that we don't know whether Iran is capable of doing it.
I think the plutonium bombs are tricky because you need to have multiple mini pre-ignition explosions to
Right.
condense the warhead of plutonium. And if
Yeah.
one doesn't go off, then that leaves an area where there's no pressure on the warhead. But a basic uranium one is simple,
But
really.
isn't the point that about these modern bombs that they use both? I believe that
They probably do. They
they
probably
use
do.
both because
Yeah.
it's like these especially these hydrogen bombs, right? I mean, they first
Mhm.
set off a nuclear explosion that basically then crunches together all this extra stuff. I believe the first bomb to go off is uranium, and then the second bomb to go off is the plutonium bomb, and then there's tritium in there and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I saw on Facebook, Ed File was saying that they are close or maybe do have enough enrichment for a bomb that could be put on a ship. And also another thing too is interesting that it's 300 feet
under of granite that's protecting it, and theoretically that could handle an atomic blast even. You know, the those nuclear sites.
Are we talking about this enrichment facility that they
Yeah,
have?
the enrichment facility. Yeah, and another thing too, because of what Trump's been doing, Pakistan. You know, they've been talking about Pakistan might give them atomic weapons to protect themselves
if the U.S. uses a bomb.
Right. It's incredible, isn't it?
Right. And that brings up another point. If you have one bomb, would you really use one bomb when you don't have a second bomb to follow up with? If you blow your whole arsenal of one bomb. United States had 3 in World War II. So we dropped 2 on Japan. We had a third one that was just ready, and it would have taken, I think, 2-3 months minimally more back in 1945, 46 to build a 4th bomb.
It
No,
depends
we
on.
can build them quick. If you only have
Yeah.
one, would North Korea launch one nuclear warhead if that was their only nuclear warhead? Probably not.
Yeah,
That's where I'm coming
it,
from.
it depends on what your frame of mind is, right? Whether you
I
are
suppose.
still rational or not. Because dropping a nuclear bomb on, let's say, Seoul, um, it's Seoul, right? Yeah, Pyongyang
Yeah.
is North Korea, Seoul is South Korea.
Yes.
I mean, dropping a bomb on Seoul basically gets you a ticket to obliteration because you will be wiped off the planet as well.
Yeah, that's it. That's
It's,
it.
So
I don't even think they
basically,
want a bomb.
if you care about your people, about your nation, you probably wouldn't. But if you
yeah,
don't really care,
yeah, that's the point. I mean, do they care, right? I mean, Kim Jong Un and his sister.
Oh, he cares.
He
I
cares.
mean, they live in a golden cage basically,
He
and they
cares.
have
yeah,
they have like a gazillion serfs.
If
Uh,
you've got a religious theocracy, uh,
like in Iran with the Ayatollah.
like or Israel too.
Okay.
But if you have a secular government, they care. They're not thinking about, well, this is going to crack open the skies and Jesus coming or some kind of thing like that.
the rapture.
The rapture is some shit. Let's get it on, United States, watch out what
Yeah,
happens.
well, it
Trump,
depends. I mean,
Trump's crazy.
even that can be a rational choice if you believe it hard enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's trouble. That's the whole. That's I mean, just look at how things stand politically. There are people in America who think that Trump is being put in, has been made president by God because
Yeah.
because they are Christian Zionists. I mean, there's weird stuff out there from rational people who really believe the stuff that they believe and who have rational thoughts about it. Whether we agree with those thoughts or not doesn't make them irrational. That's the whole problem. That's the whole problem.
Yeah, I'll come right back.
Well, it is possibly a good time to shift to our other topic. I think we wanted to talk to Thies about energy stability in Europe.
Yeah.
So here's your introduction. I'll go ahead and give us a click so that Gabe can cut it in and edit later.
All right.
Welcome to the program. This is the Eco Modernist Channel Live. I'm here with Chris Bergen, Gabe Bignetti, and our special guest. Mathis Beckers is the chairman of the ELISA Foundation, a nuclear energy advocacy group in the Netherlands. He is an author and filmmaker with a degree in information technology. He wrote Climate Zero Hour, The Non-Solutions Project, Science a la carte, and Highway to Dystopia. His YouTube channel is Thies, the Atomic Jedi. He lives in Gleen in the Netherlands. Welcome to the program, Thies.
Hi. I'm very glad to be back again.
Wonderful to see you. Your beard's a little shorter.
Oh no. It's pretty long.
Okay.
But I was planning. I was planning to cut it off because I'm going to fish before the world ends. And it's always nicer to fish with clean shaven sideburns. But enough of that. I mean, if you look at what we've been doing, so the Elisa Foundation right now it exists 4 years and 7 months. So we're trying to become 5 years old. Basically, what we do is we do pro bono and pro day lobbying in the Netherlands, right? So we work all the political parties, all the politicians that want to do anything with nuclear, but they don't feel like they have enough knowledge or they don't know where to begin. So basically, what we do is we write plans for these people. We help them, get set up, understand what is going on in the nuclear world. We take it from the most basic stuff, from explaining how a nuclear reactor works all the way up to how to shape policy in order to get started with SMRs, for instance. We also helped shape policy in the Netherlands. So currently we are planning 4 large nuclear reactors, which is what the government is doing currently. This is something that we helped shape. So we are in contact with the largest political party. Well, it's no longer the largest political party because we had Geert Wilders, and Geert Wilders blew stuff up. Not figuratively,
Politically, yeah.
not literally. So it looks like he's going to be the largest party again, but people are going to ignore him. They don't want to work with him anymore because he's an unreliable partner.
If you could explain a little bit, I think it's been close to a month and a half since
Yeah,
your government has not technically had a working government.
we have
Does
a
that make
we, we
sense?
have a caretaker government right now, which means that they can only work on things that they don't deem controversial. So what happens once the government falls is the party that basically blew it up, they get their stuff and they leave. The secretaries and everything, and the political parties that are in power, that still are in power and that remain in place, they need to make sure that policy gets enacted and everything. Uh, and what you get is this moment where all the political parties gather in the House of Parliament, and they go over it subject by subject. Nuclear was one of those subjects, and they didn't deem it controversial. So
Wow.
they're still working on the 2 to 4 large nuclear reactors policy at this moment. But there's no telling what is going to happen in November when we have new elections. There is this left-leaning party. Well, it's pretty left now because they fused with the Green Left, which is really a party that had their origins in communism and stuff, and they are very very active in the environmental movement. And then you had the center left party, which was the Workers' Party, and they fused together, and they are right now slated to become the second largest party in the Netherlands, and they really have it out for nuclear. They really don't want nuclear to happen, but luckily, their block isn't big enough to take it all. In the Netherlands, we have basically three voting blocks, and they are all evenly spaced. 1/3 is to the left, 1/3 is in the center, and 1/3 is to the right. So you always need to meld these things together, which means that you have to start negotiating about what you want to achieve as a government. And there's a good chance that the large nuclear program will survive. So that's what we are working on right now, most of the time. But yeah, I mean, if we look at it from a wider context, I mean, the impetus for inviting me was Spain,
Yes.
and Yeah, and Spain is pretty much the canary in the coal mine right now, because Spain is a lot further down this transition path than a lot of other countries are, like the Netherlands, like Germany, like Denmark, right? Countries who really invested a lot in offshore wind and onshore wind and in solar. Spain, they are lucky. I mean, they're pretty far down from where I live. It's more than 2,000 kilometers, and the closer you get to that equator, the better your solar radiance is. Plus, they have totally different weather patterns, less cloud cover, all that kind of stuff. So basically, what they thought was, well, we have. I can't recall exactly how many coal and gas plants that they had, but I do know that they chose to close 11 gigawatts of natural gas and coal plants, and they did this because they thought that they were adding so much renewables. At one point, they wouldn't need them anymore, right? Now, uh, you could also ask Meredith Angwin to tell you this. She's probably a lot better at it than I am. But the trouble with these electricity grids is that the first thing that you always need to do is balance demand with power production, right? You need to meet that demand. Without that demand, you can't put more power onto the grid as that there is demand, right? If you do that, you basically blow your grid up. Then there's the problem with voltage control. You need to stay within a reasonable degree of separation between what your voltage is. So we're talking, for instance, about consumer voltage in Europe is 230 volts. Obviously, you have your transmission network, you have your distribution network. The voltages in those networks are different because you step down as you go towards your consumers. And this is probably the most important bit of this whole parlor trick that we're pulling every day all around the world, is that you need to keep the frequency within a certain range. And in Europe, it's 50 hertz, right? So what you get is you get alternating current. So the polarity reverses 50 times every second, right? That's what it
Yes.
does. It's 50 hertz. So what happened in Spain is this: they have a merit order based market, which basically means that if you're the most expensive producer of electricity, your marginal costs are the highest because you need to buy coal or you need to buy gas, and you have a load of people that work in your plant, which add to the marginal costs. You're expected to shut down first if there is too much supply, right? So they're being curtailed first. So first you get your coal plant, then you get your gas plants, then your nuclear plants get curtailed, then you get wind, and then solar. That's basically how it goes. There's also some space for hydro in there, especially in Spain. They do have a little hydro. So what happens is you already close 11 gigawatts of firm generating power with large turbines generators. And you have this merit order system, which pushes all the rest of the gas, out of operation because there's so much solar in the system. It basically, unless it cannibalizes on itself, which solar always does, if you go beyond like 20 or 30%, and you don't add a lot of storage and other means in order to make sure that that overproduction can get dumped into some kind of storage. What happens is if you rely too much on that solar, and I believe that something weird happened in Spain where one or two solar fields started twitching somehow. I don't know what happened, whether this was an atmospheric issue or something else. So, but what happened was they started messing with the frequency. So the frequency was dropping below 50 hertz. And at some point, the grid basically, I believe that this is a brownout, what they had, right? A brownout, because the frequency dropped below 49% at one point, and there was too little inertia in the system, too little gas plants to basically pick up the slack, turn like 2 or 3 revolutions harder in order to get that frequency back up to 50 hertz again. And that's basically when the whole deal collapsed. And the interesting bit is that what you can see in the graphs is that at some point they also had an interconnect with France. You don't have a lot of interconnection power, right? I mean, there's the Pyrenees, so you only have 2 or 3 places where you can actually get an electricity line through those mountains into Spain in order to, uh, give them some electricity whenever they are short. But the point is, these interconnects, they basically have these bars, right? And these bars, they connect one grid to the other, and they can basically lift those bars. And when they lift the bars, the connection is gone. So that's what happened there, somewhere near the Pyrenees. So the interconnection went, and that basically cascaded the whole electricity system in Spain into failure. And the irony is, you see a lot of these pictures where you see, Spain after the blackout, and then you see darkness, right? That's actually not true, because they were without electricity for 6 to 8 hours, but it wasn't the entire country that was out of power. So what they did was they actually managed to start, getting parts of the grid back up online within 2 or 3 hours. But before the entirety of Spain was reconnected, I believe that it took 8 or 9 hours in total. And it was still day when it happened. So the lights were on and not at night again. But the trouble is, and this is what many people don't realize, when you get a blackout like this, it hurts. It hurts a lot of people. I mean, hospitals, they some hospitals have their own small power plants, and they have limited fuel, so they can stay online for a couple of hours with their own little power plants. But there's also a lot of hospitals that don't have this. They may have some diesel generators in order to make sure that the operating theaters stay online, ensuring that people who are getting a triple bypass, or I don't know, a colonoscopy, or whatever, whatever is necessary at that moment, that they can at least finish those operations. But hospitals, are, get into periods where they have no electricity. Think about traffic lights, right? Suppose that you have a high speed road where you can drive 80 to 100 kilometers an hour. You have those in Spain, and suddenly the electricity cuts out, and those traffic lights that are there to ensure your safety, they're no longer there, and people don't really understand what is happening, and they think, oh, maybe now it's my time to drive. You drive onto this road, and I don't know, some truck or who knows what comes barreling down the road with 80 kilometers an hour, and you didn't expect. I mean, bad stuff happens. People who have their own diesel generators, and they don't realize that their exhaust is underneath their window. It actually happened this time in Spain. There were multiple families, I believe 2 or 3 families, where people got carbon monoxide poisoning because they had their electricity, but they forgot that all sorts of weird stuff happens when you have blackouts. People literally die. So it's not cool. And the trouble is that if we look at Germany, for instance, if we look at the Netherlands, we are trying to do something similar, right? We are trying to build the Netherlands. The plan of the Netherlands is we want to build 70 gigawatts of offshore wind and 140 gigawatts of PV. And what people don't realize is that, if you depend on so much renewables, like we are planning to do, this has to happen and you're down, your luck is up. Germany, they just had their wake up call. Unfortunately, they're not restarting their nuclear power plants. They did announce that they are no longer going to oppose whatever France is doing with their nuclear power plants. But they just announced that they are going to build 20 gigawatts of new gas plants because they know what is coming. They've seen what happened in Spain, and they know that this is not a freak accident. This is something that can happen anywhere.
Right. One thing, if I could toss in really quick, I think I heard this about 2 weeks ago, that in Spain, they had all the solar panels designed to cut out if the frequency went bad to a certain point. And they
Right.
picked the exact same point for all the solar. So when you had the fluctuation on the grid, suddenly most, possibly a majority of the solar cut out together, so that even though they
Right.
had poor inertia onto the grid, all that inertia was suddenly gone from solar. And that helped ensure that there would be a blackout. Was
Right.
that, and if they had staggered the solar, one solar farm, another solar farm, just differentiate them by 0.1 or 0.3 gigahertz
Yeah.
on their cutoff point, they wouldn't have had this problem, or
It's
perhaps not
crazy. I mean,
as bad.
there's now coming, there's all sorts of reports coming out, trying
Mhm.
to pinpoint exactly what happened. And I got a lot of flack for this because I basically say, I don't say that it's solar's fault. I don't say that it's wind's fault.
I'm not trying to say that
Yeah.
either, but
What
it
I
added to it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that it is a principal design philosophy that lies at the basis of this what happened here. If you think that you can, even though your electricity demand isn't dropping, if you think that you can demolish 11 gigawatts of firm generating power and leave it up to wind and solar and a handful of other gas plants. I mean, what you're basically doing is you're inviting trouble.
Mhm.
And that's my position. It's not necessarily my position to say, well, it's absolutely solar's fault. I mean, it's the fault of the people who designed the electricity system to be the way it is right now.
In fact, we have a
Right.
quote. The system did not have sufficient voltage control capabilities. The Spanish energy minister Sarah Agassiz told news briefing in Madrid. The grid operator REE told the supply that they made their calculations and estimated that switching on more thermal plants was not necessary immediately before that cascade happened.
Oh my God.
So I put these two articles, one from Ars Technica and one from Reuters, on the Iberian
Yeah.
blackout report.
Yeah, so they were warned. I mean, just like the people in Fukushima, they had been warned. KEPCO was warned for decades before Fukushima happened, and they ignored the warnings at their own peril. And now you can see the same happening in Spain. It's not with a nuclear accident this time; it's with a blackout. But it's always you can see there's this, and I think that this is irrational. This is in part an irrational problem. What you see is there are organizations out there that have a certain view of how their world should operate, and they're basically blind for outside criticism because they are the experts. They are the people who are running the shop. Why the hell should somebody else tell them what to do, right? I mean, you see this in so many places. Just uh, and this is not exactly the same, but I was invited to give a talk about nuclear in the entire, at the other side of my country, which is a 4-hour drive, which is nothing for people in America, but for me it was like, I was halfway to Denmark by then. And I was given 7 minutes to present why I believe that a system where, if we take it from a power production standpoint, how much capacity is installed, that if you do a 45% nuclear, 55% renewable grid, right? That would be much cheaper than a 100% renewables grid. And they also invited an emeritus professor, a professor who is basically, is a pensioner, in fact. Guy was 75 or 76. I don't know how old he is. And he was given a half hour. Plus, he was given 15 minutes to answer questions. And then there was this anti-nuclear idiot there who also got 15 minutes to fact check me. And then at the end, I basically I managed to the people who organized it. They wanted to basically they had to invite me because they were getting money to organize this thing from the local municipality, and the local municipality demanded that they invited someone who was pro-nuclear. And I basically said, I'm only coming if I can answer the last 3 questions of the evening. Right? Because I'm going to be drowned out by these guys. And I got the last 3 questions. And then during those last three questions, I basically showed this professor what I was made of. And then at the end, when everybody was going home, he walked up to me and he said, listen, dude, you really need to stop this because I've got some real problems with what you're saying. He said, you're anti-wind and anti-solar, and your claim that you don't need as much transmission and distribution hardware in your system is simply untrue. And he said, listen, nuclear power plants SMRs are never going to be realized before 2045. And the only thing that I told him was, listen, I've never met you before, but and this guy is basically, he's a professor, or he used to be a professor in energy transitions, right? So these are people who really have their own world that they live in. Think about Mark C. Jacobson, right? The 4 books that I wrote were basically trying to tell people why Mark C. Jacobson's story is untrue and even dangerous.
And Amory Lovins, yes.
And Amory Lovins, right? So this is basically the Mark C. Jacobson of the Netherlands. And then I said, listen, you're way out of line here. I said, listen, I help not just politicians connect with the nuclear industry, but I actually help write policy to make these things happen in the Netherlands. And I know that we can realize an SMR in the Netherlands by 2032, maybe 2033. Actually, I am, somewhat connected to one of these projects, which is actually being done in the city that we were hosted by. And then he got angry with me. He said, well, can you tell me who the financiers are? And he started walking up to me and he said, see, you don't know you don't know who is putting money into this business. I happen to know the guy who, is doing this project, and he has no money and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, listen, I know that you have a vested interest in your renewable plan, and you're making your tour through the country, telling everybody that nuclear can't, be realized in 20 years. And I'm the first one who tells you that you're wrong. I mean, this is so pervasive in this world. In this energy world, you've got experts, people who believe in their own thing. And once they get confronted with, I believe that I have a fairly well-researched, all my arguments come from analysis, and I share all my, every little thing that I do, that I put into my models is accounted for, and these people just can't handle it. And it's the same with the people in Spain. It's the same with the people in Germany. All these, Denmark, same thing. Even though they just ended the moratorium on nuclear power, what you see is that now the civil servants have to do something about it. They have to do these what you call it, feasibility studies and such. And they come up with all sorts of arguments that it's not going to work in Denmark, right? And it's just a never-ending struggle. And I believe that Spain, they are so far gone now at this moment that the blackout was unavoidable. And if we don't course correct in the Netherlands, if we don't course correct in Denmark or in Germany, then we are going to get our blackout as well. That's what I basically am afraid of at this moment.
So is
With
there a way to start rectifying, like having people, school kids or other adults even go to power plants and go to utilities
Yeah,
and get a tour of what's
I get
going
it.
on?
But I mean, public support isn't a problem in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Roughly 60% is in favor of building new nuclear power plants, so it's a comfortable margin. The same for France. Even in Germany, there's a reasonably comfortable margin where people are actually in favor of nuclear. The same can be said for Denmark. The trouble right now is in the inertia. If you look at not the literal inertia, the 50 hertz thing, but the inertia that has been built up. I mean, the solar industry and the wind industry, they have really permeated through all these layers, right? Civil servants, development companies, right? Over here in the Netherlands, we have regional development companies, and these regional development companies are basically semi-government companies, and all they do is they talk to factories, they talk to other producers of goods, and they basically help them develop a new business case for a different factory, for a new product, etc. Right? And this is these institutions are all riven with these people who have either took the narrative hook, line, and sinker that it's all going to be renewable and that's a fantastic future, and they're working very hard on this, right? So if you take all of these institutions, you take the industry, the power industry. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if like 80 or 85% on the pay of the people who are on the payroll are actually people who are working on wind, solar, renewable, or some kind of transition stuff, right? That is basically geared up to do this renewable thing. So the trouble right now, especially in Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, I believe that those are the three worst cases out there. If we let Spain and Portugal fall by the wayside for a moment, it's just inertia. There's too many people who have a vested interest in doing this renewable thing, and our plans were made without actually doing the due diligence, right? So I'm doing the due diligence right now. I'm actually making, well, I've written a load match program, which basically can test whether system A, B, C, or D, I can put whatever mix in there that I want, whether that system can deliver electricity on demand, right? So I have the demand profile of 2023. I've built in some flexibility in the peaks and in the low points, and then I can say, okay, listen, suppose that we are going to grow to 500 terawatt hours per year. Right now we're at 120 terawatt hours. And I built in this flexibility plus a little bit of demand response, what everybody wants, which I think is bullshit. Uh, Nobody is going to be a weatherman and only do the dishes or wash your clothes when it's sunny or windy outside. you know. But that's the way because some people actually have these flexible electricity contracts where they actually go onto the spot market and buy electricity on the spot market. So when gas is like ruining the spot market and making prices 20 times higher than they usually are, then these people are turning off all the electrics in their house, right? But so that's the whole trouble, the whole problem. It's not political will, it's not public support. There's plenty of that. It's just this whole renewable machine has been institutionalized in government, in all of these institutions that have something to say about electricity and power. And all of these power companies have become shy because the government and the politics keep changing their mind every 2, 3, 4 years. We have the most modern coal plant in Rotterdam, which was finished in like 2008, and it's already closing again next year. Uh, they were asking Vattenfall, which is actually a Swedish company, but it's the biggest power producing company in the Netherlands, to build biomass plants. A lot of hullabaloo about biomass. There were protests and people were angry about it. And first, the government issued a contract and a license for Vattenfall to basically rebuild this whole power plant and turn it into a biomass plant. And then they rescinded it. They said, oh, you know what? Let's forget about it. Well, they invested a couple of billion euros into this new power plant. So all the power companies, the only thing that they do is when they see a lot of subsidy for wind and solar, they jump on it. And all the assets that are in play right now, gas plants, coal plants, biomass plants, they basically say, no, all we do is the bare necessity to keep them running. But as soon as we can get out of here, we will be out of here. So we've got a real system failure on our hands right now.
We had this problem. We have this problem in the East Coast of the United States. We had a giant movement to shut down Indian Point. We'll replace that power. We promise we'll replace it with transmission from Canada. And Riverkeeper is now opposing the transmission. And there's a dearth of power available. There's a problem. And there's 40 to 60-year-old co-generating oil plants that are still running. And that's,
Riverkeeper, wasn't that also the club that Mark Ruffalo was involved with?
Mark Ruffalo and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the anti-vaxxer who is now wreaking havoc in the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
How is it possible that these morons get so much clout? I mean, it's beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I started myself. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has some kind of disease which makes him talk weird.
It's Parkinson's, I think.
I don't know what he has, but
maybe not. I'm not sure.
I don't know what he has, but
it might have been just decades of alcoholism.
No, he actually has an illness.
Yeah, he has something, but I mean, beside that, I mean, the guy's jacked. He's pretty fit for the age that he's in, and I just don't get it. I mean, is it the Kennedy curse? Is it because his whole family got slaughtered somehow that he has developed this position where he just believes random bullshit, right? About
Not completely. He got paid. He's a lawyer. He's represented a lot of environmental lawsuits from these environmental organizations that we mostly don't like, and RDC especially. He has been one of their primary lawyers.
Wasn't he involved with Ivan Ba at one point?
The solar project. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wanted to ask something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm backing up a little bit. You were saying how solar, I mean, if it's 20% or more,
percent on the grid, it cannibalizes itself. Could you kind of explain that?
Yeah, the trouble is, first of all, and we're way past 20%, by the way, just to give you a heads up. Our power system has like roughly 21 gigawatts of conventional power installed, right? And we have over 30 gigawatts of solar in our system. And it's all being put onto the same grid that was meant to handle this 21 gigawatt power system. So right now we're running 50 gigawatts of power over a power distribution and transmission system that was meant to handle 30 at max, and we're pushing 50 onto it. Well, not all the time, because obviously most of those gas plants and gas plants and coal plants will be shut down or are basically put into standby mode because they are not needed at those moments. So what happens is, for solar to matter, for any power power technology to really matter in the context of a country like the Netherlands, for instance, you really need to jack up the capacity that you install, right? So we're at 30 gigawatts right now. We need to get to 140. What people don't realize is that, first of all, if you do 140 gigawatts of capacity, you also need to have 140 gigawatts of demand somehow. The maximum demand in the Netherlands has not reached 22 or 23 gigawatts yet. So we could still do with our coal and gas plants at this moment. We need a little juice from Germany or from UK or from Denmark or Sweden, and that's how we could run our system. However, we want to do solar. Everybody knows that solar at higher latitudes performs worse because the angle at which the sun hits those panels becomes ever more oblique, and the more oblique you get, basically the less photons this panel captures, and that's what makes it less efficient. So you need to install more and even more and even more. Now, the trouble is, you're installing so much solar into a system that doesn't have the kind of demand that the maximum solar can deliver. So at some point, you have to tell the solar producers, listen, you're all producing at this moment that is inopportune. There's not as much demand as that you are delivering. So you basically have to start shutting down solar fields. And that's basically the moment when they start cannibalizing on each other. What happens during those periods is that the electricity price becomes negative, right? So they have to start paying to put power onto the grid, and that's when cannibalization basically occurs. And there's all kinds of mechanisms market mechanisms predominantly, that they come up with in order to make sure that the bottom line doesn't fall from underneath these solar fields. So you have to contract for difference, for instance, which means that you agree upon a certain price, right? So the government does an auction, you agree on a price. And what happens is, whenever there is too much solar and everybody is being undercut, the government comes in and makes sure that you still get the money for the kilowatt hour that you agreed on with the auction price. So they have to pay the difference. And when you are earning more than you agreed upon, you have to pay the government. Now, it's far from a perfect system, and we are currently trying to lobby to get a capacity market in the Netherlands. So capacity market works the other way around. You basically auction off capacity, right? You say, for instance, Bosel is our 500 megawatt pressurized water reactor in the Netherlands. As last year, it had a capacity factor of 93%. So they can go onto the capacity market and say, listen, we're pretty certain that we can deliver this power next week when it's needed. So, pay us to be, able to produce that power at that moment. I believe that the UK has a capacity market and France has a capacity market. It's just a complete different approach to how to sell electricity and how to ensure that that power is produced when you need it. And the whole trouble with solar and wind is that they produce whenever there is wind and whenever there is sun. And it just doesn't match what we're doing as a society. That's the whole problem. There's a fundamental mismatch between production and demand.
Do you think that eliminating subsidies, or at least putting a cap on, kind of like a negative cap on subsidies where the price drops below a penny, that it would stop the subsidy? Would that
I'm
make much of a difference?
Yeah, I mean the trouble at this moment is that this CFD thing is also seen as a subsidy, because it guarantees revenue, right? That's
Right.
the point. It guarantees
Yeah.
revenue.
Yeah.
Well,
If they're asked to shut down, we'll pay you for what you're not making because you would have made it otherwise.
it even get worse. If you look at the UK, for instance, they had to pay 2 billion last year, 2 billion to pay to owners of windmills to have them shut their windmills down. I mean, at some point, I always call it junk, right? You add so much junk into the system, and you have to pay these people to make sure that the junk doesn't keep sloshing into this bucket that we have, because you get this whole mess if you don't stop it, and that's what we're doing right now. And the whole subsidy thing as well, it's perverse, right? It's a perverse incentive. It doesn't it doesn't um it so the trouble is, we live in a liberal society in the Netherlands. It's not the same liberal as in the United States. The liberal society in the Netherlands means that you get the free market, and he who gets to produce the cheapest and best product wins the market, right? That's basically what classical liberalism means. If you're the cheapest and you're the best, everybody buys your stuff, and others, they get an incentive to become cheaper and better than the one who has cornered the market at that moment, right? That's how competition works. That's the kind of liberalism that we have in the Netherlands. But the trouble
Sounds like
is that,
capitalism.
yeah, it is capitalism. We used to have the first what do you call it? You have Wall Street. What do they trade there? Stocks.
Stock
The
market.
first the first stock in the world was a Dutch stock. It was from
The bulbs,
yeah,
tulip bulbs.
The East India Company. The East India Company issued the first stock in the whole world. So
Okay.
we Dutch, we invented capitalism to some degree. But the trouble is, with all these subsidies, what you're doing is you're basically skewing the market, right? You're no longer paying for the best service, because the solar panels, yes, they produce cheap electricity, but they produce cheap electricity when you don't need it. But it's the subsidized electricity form. And the other electricity sources that don't get subsidized, like our 485 megawatt pressurized water reactor, well, they get to roll up against the stream and try. It has already been paid off. Luckily, it was paid off 20 years ago. It turned 50 in 2023. It will turn 60 in 2033, and it will turn 70 in 2043, because we intend to keep it running for at least 70 years. So that's the saving grace. They can sell electricity at a reasonably low cost, right? Like 42 euros per megawatt hour, which would translate to like something like 5 or 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour in the United States. So it's a cheap nuclear power plant, and that's the reason why they still exist. But if it were any more expensive than that, let's say it were 6 or 6.5 or 7 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe these these 10 years up until 2033 might have been the last 10 years of this nuclear power plant. Right now they're making bank because they can sell electricity very often for nearly double the price as what they produce it for, right? So this is basically an unsubsidized asset that has been paid off, that is producing electricity whenever we need it. So it still exists. But suppose that you want to build a new nuclear power plant. Yeah, that's a serious problem. That's the reason why the government of the Netherlands says, well, we need to do this, because if we don't do it, there's no private company who's willing to fork up 20 or 25 billion for a two-plant power plant. There simply isn't a business case for it over here, because we have all this subsidized solar and wind crap in our system that keeps demolishing the market. So the market, it fails periodically. I think that a market fails whenever there's so much product on the market that nobody wants to buy, nobody has use for. Basically, that's market failure. And it's occurring each month that we have situations where the market price turns negative for electricity. And it's just, it's unsustainable. These people are all talking about, building the most sustainable new world with all this wind and solar. But if you look at it from a bean counter's perspective, what you see happening in Europe right now, you see it happening in Denmark, you see it happening in France, not in France, in the UK, in the Netherlands. We have all these what do you call it when you have something at an auction, right? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. Yeah.
Mm.
So we have all these lots on the ocean, on the sea, lots where there's a lot for, I believe it's 1.2 gigawatts of wind power, and it's getting auctioned off. Nobody's bidding at this moment. Nobody's bidding because the whole market is already collapsing regularly on a regular basis. So everybody who's, all those people who came to the market first and capitalized that first 10-20% of the market with their solar panels, they were having a field day, because they had their subsidized panels. They got money, they got paid no matter what was happening in the market. But right now, when you have to install your stuff in this same market and you see that the bottom falls out from underneath your business case, let's say that it is 10 or 12% of the time that you can actually produce some electricity. Well, it undercuts your business case. So they basically are saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. So nobody's willing. They're still building windmills. The windmills that are currently being built were auctioned off several years ago. When the market was still reasonably. That's my cat. When the market was still reasonably stable, but the more market instability occurs, the less these people are interested in actually participating in this market. So I don't see a way out of it right now.
Yeah,
I do see a way out of it.
And with grid stability, market stability, do we know what a good, fair, stable price would be, since we have so many subsidies for over a decade now? Do we know what that affordable, stable price should be even?
Well, over here, we've gotten used to very high electricity prices, right? I'm paying 27 cents per kilowatt hour, euro cents. So that's like, I don't know, maybe 35, 36 cents per US dollar, per kilowatt, US dollar per kilowatt. So cents, right? Not US dollars, cents per kilowatt. So like 35, 36, 37 cents per kilowatt hour. What is it in the US right now?
Ooh. I think that our local nuclear plant is probably around 10 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour.
He's talking household.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Billing.
What is the household cost?
it's probably less than 20 cents, but I'd have to look.
I
Well, there
think
you
it
go.
varies widely from different
Yeah.
regions. I
So
think it
so
can
so
vary quite a bit.
and it stands to reason because you've got a lot of different profiles, right? In the United States. I mean, if you live in Chicago and you're surrounded by what, 6 nuclear power plants, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
There we go. Seattle. Seattle, which is mostly hydro, is 13.9 cents per kilowatt hour.
And that's consumer price.
Yeah.
I mean, we pay at least 3 times that.
Yeah.
Just for context, what we are facing right now is a real crisis in the Netherlands. We have these CO2 taxation, right? On the CO2 taxation is mainly put onto big companies who use a lot of power. That's European. Then the Dutch government decided, in all their wisdom, that they are going to add their own CO2 tax on top of that. Okay, so that's really high. Next, we have some of the highest electricity prices in the whole world. And we have some of the best paid people in the whole world. So what you see, and this is happening every month, for instance, in the port of Rotterdam, 5 big companies say, listen, we're going to go belly up if we don't stop this operation here. We used to have 5 oil refineries in Rotterdam: Q8, Esso, Total, I believe Shell, and British Petroleum. I believe that those were the 5 that we used to have. Q8 then became Gunvor. And what happened next? What happened next is that Gunvor basically said, which happened not last month, but the month before, we're going to stop all production in Rotterdam. And that's a big deal. I mean, if you have 5 refineries and one of them says, sayonara, we're out of here because the electricity cost is too high, the CO2 tax is too high, and we have to pay our people. So the question, is relevant. At which point does power become conducive to economic activity again? And in the Netherlands, what we're trying to do with these SMR developers is basically we're going to co-locate SMRs near big factories, and we're basically keeping them off the grid. We're going to tie from the transformer that's next to the nuclear power plant. We're going to run a line 150 kilovolts or 200 kilovolts, 220 kilovolts. I believe we have 150, 220, and 380. So 150 or 220 to data center or to a steel mill or to a paper factory, right? That's the only way at this moment how we can keep some industry going. So, but the trouble is, and this is something that most people don't realize, if the most expensive generator in the Netherlands generates electricity at like 7 cents per kilowatt hour, right? That's the most expensive one, 7 cents per kilowatt hour, and we're paying near 30, which tells you that there's ballast there, 23 cents of ballast. And a portion of this ballast is the cost for the offshore grid, which is more than 1 billion per gigawatt. Then we have the electrification ballast, because everyone here in the Netherlands is electrifying whatever they do in home. We're no longer heating with gas; we're heating with heat pumps. We're no longer cooking with gas; we're cooking with electrical furnaces. Well, I've got 3 PCs in my home. I've got 4 PCs in my home. I've got 2 kids. People are, buying Teslas and whatever electrical car that they can get their hands on. So we've got a huge, huge contingent of the Dutch people who are electrifying, which means that we are getting congested from 2 sides. We're getting congested in the supply side, where we have 50 gigawatts of power in a transmission network that can handle 30 at most. And we also have a lot of, we've got increasing electricity demand in houses and factories and businesses that need 1.5 times or maybe even 2 times or even 3 times as much power as they used to use. So the expansion of that grid expansion, not just for the added capacity, but also for increasing the capacity of the users, the user interface, basically, that is adding to all this cost. And then there is taxes, obviously tax revenue in there. So I believe that 1/3 of our bill is like production cost. 1/3 of our bill is surcharges for new electricity transmission lines, transformers, offshore grid, onshore grid, right? That's 1/3. And then you've got 1/3 taxes. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter how expensive any new plant is anymore. It can be 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Let's take the new X300 that is being built at Darlington for 20 billion Canadian dollars, right? 4 units, 1,200 megawatts in total. I mean, if I put those figures into my LCOE calculator, it gives me at an investment rate of 6%. So if we would pay 6% interest and such, then it would give me a levelized cost of electricity of 87 euros per megawatt hour. So 8.7 cents per kilowatt hour, which is entirely doable. So I get that a lot of people think that 20 billion for 4 SMRs is eye-wateringly expensive. But if you live in the Netherlands, $20 billion for 4 SMRs is not that much, really. And that's a significant problem. That's a significant problem because once you get used to that kind of pricing, your industry is going to wither on the vine. Stuff in the Netherlands is expensive. So for us, making stuff sustainable again, making sure that our industry isn't going to run away is going to take a hell of a job. Yeah. It's a whole other thing as in America, where, with all due respect, I believe that your threshold for your threshold is a lot lower.
Yeah. We've been going for about an hour on the core topic here, so why don't we let you talk about what is happening next for yourself personally, for the ELISA Foundation, for energy stability in Europe? What is the top thing that you want to close us out with?
Right. So my YouTube channel is a little bit asleep at this moment because I'm so busy with my lobby work that I simply don't have the time to do this stuff. ELISA, we basically have national elections in November for the House of Representatives, which also means that we're going to get a new government because we choose our the parties that are going to govern them. And then in March next year, we're going to have municipal elections as well. And they are important because we are trying a bottom-up approach where we try to find the municipalities that want nuclear, that are, that want these SMRs. So we have developed a plan for these municipalities on how they can actually do policy work in order to work towards that goal. And at this moment, it's going great. We have very good ties with Rotterdam, which is basically, it's the pearl. It's the pearl of the Netherlands. If we, together with the people from Rotterdam, if we can manage at least to keep the government going with these large nuclear power plants, but also if we can get SMR development in Rotterdam, that basically cuts the cake. That's our crowning victory if we can manage that. And we're working in four other municipalities at this moment, just for SMRs, which is looking very good at this moment.
Excellent.
So I'm very happy with that.
Thank you very much for showing up for us today.
Yeah.
Mathis Beckers. That has been the Eco-Modernist channel live. You can watch us every Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on YouTube at Eco-Modernist1. That's at Eco-Modernist1 or the Eco-Modernist channel. You can find us on Facebook at the Eco-Modernist Society of North America. And you can find us rebroadcast many places on my personal network. I'm Carl Alex Pauls on X.com, on LinkedIn, and on Twitch at Soyaddle or Soyaddle.tv. Please support us on Patreon. Look for the Eco-Modernist channel. And you can find us online at ESNA.earth. That's ESNA.earth. Remember, missions first, peace and justice will follow.
Peace.
I want to speak to you about a new organization called the Eco-Modernist Society of North America. I'm here because we are in the midst of a potentially monumental ecological crisis. It is only through a new environmentalism 2.0 that progress can be made. We believe that our only hope for human advancement and even human survival is through the exponential advance of science in the service of humanity. Eco-modernism is a new environmental paradigm which looks to reverse the fear of nuclear power and scientific progress in general. Ecology-based modernism is the most direct way to define it. Eco-modernism as a philosophy is described in the Eco-Modernist Manifesto. We believe humanity should not be rejecting technological progress, but rather separate our impacts from nature through the responsible use of technology and urbanization. Urbanization is an unstoppable worldwide trend and the best solution to many environmental problems. It offers sustainable development for the human population and is a historic antidote to both deforestation and species extinction as humans move away from using wildlife as their protein source. Vertical, urban, high-rise architecture minimizes the use of land, resources, and energy, enabling walkable cities that facilitates the more efficient use of mass public transit as well. It must be emphasized that our support for technological solutions is definitely not about defending industrial polluters, nor does our defense of technology imply that we just need to sit back and let things take care of themselves. To the contrary, we believe that humanity is at a crossroads that severely threatens our future on this planet. I hope by now you understand the worthiness of our cause. Eco-modernism is really only a philosophy at this time. I want to talk to you about the necessity of turning it into a movement, which will be part of the larger environmentalist movement. For it is only through our presence and participation that there can be any hope of moving environmentalism in the right direction. Our aim is not to divide the environmental movement, but rather to multiply its numbers with the incorporation of many scientific and educational communities that is working to both build chapters of eco-modernist societies and support our growth worldwide.